What if one of the richest silver strikes in American history wasn't really a discovery at all, but something closer to an excavation? In 1879, deep beneath a booming mining town in Nevada, a veteran miner stepped into a place that didn't make sense. Not just unusual, not just rare, but impossible, the kind of place that forces a question you can't unask. Because it didn't look like nature, and it definitely didn't look like anything built by 19th century miners. And here's where things get strange. Within days, the area was sealed, reports were rewritten, and the man who saw it was quietly pushed into silence. So what exactly did he find nearly 3,000 feet underground? And why did it scare people enough to bury the truth? To understand that, you have to go back before the silver rush, before the headlines, before the maps even existed. Long before prospectors flooded into Nevada, indigenous communities along the western edge of the Great Basin had stories about the mountains. Not stories about gold or silver, but about what was beneath them. That they didn't mine there, didn't explore there, didn't even linger there, not because it lacked value, but because it had too much. According to early accounts, these communities spoke of deep passageways inside the mountains, rooms that weren't natural, structures with no clear origin, and a warning passed down through generations. Some places are not meant to be opened. Fast forward to the late 1850s, when prospectors strike silver and trigger one of the most explosive mining booms in American history. By the 1870s, operations were pushing deeper than almost any in North America, carving down thousands of feet into the earth where temperatures soared and the air thickened into something barely breathable. At first, everything made sense, or veins, quartz, predictable geology, but then something shifted. Miners began noticing walls that were too smooth, angles too perfect, cavities that didn't follow natural fractures, spaces that felt constructed. And here's the problem. These weren't rumors from amateurs. These were observations from men who spent their lives underground, men who could tell the difference between a natural cave and a cut surface just by touch. One of those men was a Welsh-born miner with decades of experience in some of the deepest mines in the world. He wasn't easily impressed, and he wasn't easily fooled, and more importantly, he knew when something didn't belong. For years, he kept his head down, working, watching, noticing small inconsistencies, sections of tunnels suddenly sealed, maps that didn't match reality, entire passages disappearing from official records. At first, he assumed poor documentation or safety measures, but when he began checking for himself, he found something different. Those sealed sections weren't cave-ins. They were deliberate, filled, reinforced, hidden. Someone wasn't just mining the mountain. They were controlling access to it. And in 1879, he was chosen for something no one else wanted to do. Go deeper than anyone had gone before and come back with answers. Or not come back at all. By the late 1870s, pushing deeper wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous in ways most people couldn't imagine. Below roughly 2,500 feet, equipment began to fail, cables strained under their own weight, ventilation broke down, and temperatures climbed into ranges that made even short exposure risky. But the real problem wasn't the heat. It was what the drills were hitting. Instead of cutting through expected layers, drill bits began to fracture suddenly, as if striking something far harder than anticipated, and when samples were finally brought up, they didn't match geological expectations. The material appeared denser, structurally inconsistent, almost out of place, and more unsettling. It showed signs of exposure to intense, controlled heat. Not volcanic, not natural, but deliberate. And that changes everything, because natural geology doesn't process rock with precision. People do. Some engineers wanted to stop and investigate, but production continued. And instead of slowing down, the company decided to push even deeper beyond 3,000 feet, not to extract silver, but to explore. For that task, they chose someone experienced, observant, and steady, the miner who had already been quietly questioning everything. He accepted, but prepared carefully, sensing this wasn't routine. The descent took hours, first by lift, then by ladder, as machinery could no longer be trusted at those depths. The deeper he went, the quieter it became. Fewer workers, fewer signs of activity. until he reached a staging platform just above the target depth, and something felt wrong. It was empty. No crew, no tools, no signs of work. Just a single rope ladder leading further down into a vertical shaft. And here's where it stops making sense. That ladder wasn't on any official map, yet it looked new, recently installed, meaning someone had already been there quietly, without documentation. He tested it, solid, and began descending. The shaft was perfectly vertical, not following natural formations, just a straight drop through solid rock, something that shouldn't have been possible with their tools. About 100 feet down, it opened into a chamber. Not a cave, not a mining cavity, but a space that looked designed. He didn't rush forward, because every instinct told him to observe. The walls were smooth, finished, not rough cut, the angles exact, the floor level in a way natural ground never is, and the ceiling arched with a structural balance that felt engineered. Then he saw it clearly. A door, centered in the chamber as if the entire space had been built around it, dark, seamless, set into a precisely carved stone frame with no hinges, no handle, no visible mechanism. Around it were markings, geometric, repeating, structured, some resembling diagrams, others like unfamiliar star maps. This wasn't random, it was designed to mean something, just not to him. He circled the chamber, noticing a faint airflow moving toward the door, suggesting the space wasn't isolated but connected to something beyond it. In one corner, he found fragments, objects, not natural debris, pieces of heavy glass-like material, shaped metal, and among them, a circular disc covered in intricate etched patterns, precise and layered, not decorative but informational, as if encoding something. He took it, not out of greed, but because he knew it might be the only proof. He examined the door, pressed against it, cold, unmoving, not locked but fixed as if it was never meant to open from that side. And that raises a different question. If it wasn't meant to open from the outside, who was it built for? The heat forced him to leave, and when he returned to the surface, he was immediately questioned, not with curiosity, but with concern, even fear. Within days, the entire section was sealed, officially due to instability, but he knew better because unstable rock isn't reinforced. It's avoided. This was something else. During questioning, he downplayed what he saw and denied taking anything, but the explanations offered to him, geological anomalies, mineral formations, were hollow, and he could tell they didn't believe him, yet they didn't push further. That alone was telling. Over time, he began uncovering records of earlier incidents, other miners finding similar chambers at shallower depths, each time briefly documented, dismissed, and sealed. A pattern emerged, one too consistent to ignore. This wasn't a one-time discovery. It was a repeated one, systematically hidden. He tried to have the object analyzed, but reactions were always the same. Initial interest followed by withdrawal, experts unable or unwilling to explain it, conversations shutting down the moment the topic surfaced. Years passed, the mines declined, operations ceased, but the deepest sections remained sealed, untouched. He spent his life documenting what he had seen, trying to bring attention to it, but the story never gained traction, not because it lacked detail, but because it challenged established timelines. After his death, his notes were stored away and forgotten, until decades later when they were rediscovered, revealing a consistent, detailed account that was difficult to dismiss. Modern scans of the area have since detected large, unexplained cavities deep beneath the old mining zones, yet access remains restricted, denied under reasons that sound reasonable until you realize they are always applied to the same place. So now the question isn't whether something is down there, but why no one is allowed to go back. If those miners truly carved every tunnel themselves, why did they keep finding rooms already there? If everything was natural, why hide it? And if that door was just rock, why did it look like it was built to separate something? Maybe the real story isn't about what was discovered, but what was contained, because somewhere beneath that quiet stretch of Nevada, thousands of feet below the surface, the chamber may still exist, untouched, with a door that is never opened, and whatever lies beyond it still waiting. What if everything you just heard is only a fragment of a much bigger hidden history, and the rest is still out there waiting to be uncovered? If this changed the way you see the world, hit subscribe now, because the next story goes even deeper. Share this with someone who questions everything, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you think about this. And now I want to hear your take. Do you believe this was a lost underground civilization, a hidden industrial project far ahead of its time, or something else entirely that we still don't understand? Drop your theory in the comments, because I'll be reading every single one. If you made it this far, you already know this story doesn't end here, and the next one we're uncovering might be even more unsettling. So hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and don't miss what comes next.